So, have you ever stopped to think about how weird economics is? You have all these brilliant people, right? They all study the exact same thing, the economy, but somehow they come up with completely opposite advice. It's enough to make your head spin. One group says one thing with absolute certainty, that the best possible thing to do is for the government to just do nothing. Seriously, they believe the market is this magical, self-healing thing that'll find its own perfect balance if we all just get out of its way. And then you've got another group of equally smart, equally qualified economists telling you the exact opposite. They're shouting that the government has to jump in, print money, and spend it like crazy, or the whole system is going to collapse on itself. It's a totally fair question, isn't it? How can both of those things possibly be true at the same time? Well, that's what we're going to dig into. And what you'll find is that the answer has less to do with numbers and charts and a whole lot more to do with power. Okay, the best way to wrap your head around this is with a simple idea. Think of every economic theory as a different pair of glasses, a different lens. Each one is looking at the same world, but it focuses on a completely different part of it. One lens focuses on markets, another on government, another on how we humans actually behave. No single lens shows you the whole picture, but if we look through all of them, the chaos starts to make a little more sense. So let's start with the oldest, biggest fight in all of economics. I'm talking the heavyweight championship of the world, the free market versus the role of government. In one corner, you've got classical economics. This is the OG theory, the very foundation of capitalism. And its core belief is, well, beautiful in its simplicity. Markets fix themselves. If something's too expensive, people stop buying it and the price comes down. If there's a need, someone will create a business to fill it. It's like an invisible hand is guiding everything toward a perfect balance. And this theory seemed to work great, right up until the moment it catastrophically didn't. When the Great Depression hit, it completely shattered that idea. The economy didn't just dip, it crashed, and it just stayed crashed for years. The so-called invisible hand was nowhere to be found, and classical economists had absolutely no answer. And right into that chaos steps this guy, John Maynard Keynes. He looked at the wreckage of the Depression and came up with a pretty radical idea for the time. Sometimes the market just gets stuck. He argued that when everyone gets scared, they hoard money, businesses stop investing, and the entire economic engine can grind to a halt. The self-correcting machine? It's broken. So what was his fix? The government has to step in. Keynes said that during a crisis, the government has to become the spender of last resort. And this is where we get all those tools we hear about today. Stimulus checks, cutting interest rates to make borrowing cheaper, and even running a big deficit to pump money into a struggling economy. The whole point is to give the engine a jumpstart when it stalls out. And there you have it, the fundamental conflict. The classical view says government interference just gums up the works. The Keynesian view says that sometimes government intervention is the only thing that can save us from a total downward spiral. And honestly, this one argument pretty much defines our entire political landscape to this day. All right, let's switch to our next set of lenses. After all that chaos, a lot of economists started searching for a cleaner, more predictable, almost mathematical way to understand the economy. They were basically trying to find order in the madness. This brings us to a school of thought called Monetarism, and its main champion was Milton Friedman. For a monetarist, all that government spending stuff is just noise. The only thing that really matters is the money supply itself. Their core belief is laser-focused. If you print too much money, you get inflation. End of story. So for them, the main job of a central bank is to just keep the money supply growing at a slow, steady, predictable rate. Now this next one. This is probably the one you learned about in your Econ 101 class. It's called neoclassical economics, and it's the foundation for most modern textbooks. It creates these really clean, elegant models based on two gigantic assumptions. One, that all of us act perfectly rationally to get the best deal for ourselves, and two, that companies always act to maximize their profits. It's like the operating manual for a perfect, logical economic machine. And right there, you can probably spot the massive flaw, right? Real people aren't logical robots. We're not spreadsheets. We are messy, emotional creatures driven by fear, by greed, by excitement, by what everyone else is doing. And our unpredictable human behavior is constantly breaking these beautiful, clean economic models. So this realization, the fact that you can't possibly understand the economy without understanding actual people and power dynamics, led to some really fascinating new lenses that totally challenge that whole idea of a rational, orderly market. This leads us to one of my favorites, behavioral economics. The key insight here is brilliant. It says, yes, humans are irrational, but we are predictably irrational. We mess up in the same ways over and over again. We're consistently overconfident, we hate losing way more than we enjoy winning, and we're super easily influenced by what the crowd is doing. And once you start looking through this lens, so much of the weirdness in our economy starts to make perfect sense. This is how you explain sudden stock market crashes, people getting swept up in irrational housing bubbles, and it is the only way to explain something as wild as meme stock madness. This is where economics finally meets real human psychology. And then there's another lens, one that focuses less on our individual brains and more on group power dynamics. Marxist economics. This viewpoint says the real story of capitalism isn't about supply and demand. It's about a constant struggle between two groups, the workers who actually create the value, and the owners who control the factories and the offices and who ultimately extract the profits. For a Marxist, growing inequality isn't a glitch in the system. It's the whole point of the system. Okay, deep breath. We've looked through a whole bunch of different lenses now: classical, Keynesian, monetarist, Marxist, and more. So let's get back to that first big question we asked. With all these totally competing ideas, which one is actually right? Well, as you can probably guess, the debate is hotter than ever. Today you've got theories like Austrian economics, which basically trusts government even less than the classical guys and blames central banks for everything. And then on the total opposite side of the universe, you have modern monetary theory, or MMT, which argues that a government that prints its own money can't really go broke and should just spend whatever is needed to fix problems, with inflation as the only real speed limit. So again, which one is correct? We've seen how each theory seems to explain a different piece of the puzzle, but not a single one explains the whole thing. But you know what? Maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. This is the key. Instead of asking, is this theory true? A much more useful question is, who benefits when we use this theory to make policy? Think about it. A policy to cut taxes on investments? Well, that benefits investors. A policy for a higher minimum wage and stronger unions? That benefits workers. Every single theory, when put into practice, has winners and losers. And that, right there, is the ultimate takeaway. Choosing an economic theory isn't like choosing a law of physics that's always true. It's about choosing a set of priorities, a set of values. Because when you strip it all down, economics isn't some neutral science of charts and numbers. It's a deeply, deeply human story about who has power, who gets what, and who gets to decide.